You know, I was telling somebody yesterday that I just love Nigeria, and I particularly love Lagos, as stressful as it is. It's just an incredible country, and particularly an incredible city. And I'm sure we all experienced that coming here today. But please relax, breathe in, breathe out, and just be determined to have a good time here today. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to share, and there's a lot of networking that will go on today. So welcome once again. I want to formally welcome you on behalf of the author. In the world that I live in, the most important people in the world are authors. I happen to host a TV show, and we always debate whether if somebody is a professor and comes on the show, should we put professor something there, or should we put author? And a long time ago, we decided that just put author there because that's the greatest title in the world. So, on behalf of the author of the new book, Dr. Kofo, Obasanjo, Blackshire, she's seated there, very beautiful. I would like to welcome you formally, and of course, on behalf of her family too. You're going to get to meet with them as this program goes on. But I will leave a number of the introductions till later as we go into the event. But generally, right now, I want to acknowledge the presence of the former president of Nigeria, the father of the author, the one and only, needs very little introduction, His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. You know, for some of us, you have to read long profiles. For some, the name just is enough to introduce him. Chief Obasanjo is a great leader in Nigeria and has served this country meritoriously for many, many decades. And he's gone from being just a leader to an elder statesman. We are very delighted to have Chief Obasanjo here, and he has a lot to share with us as this event goes on. I will be introducing him more and talking about him more later on. I also want to welcome formally the chairman of this event. He also needs very little introduction. He's a very distinguished leader, corporate leader in Nigeria. He has been for many decades. And I'm speaking about Mr. Aigboje Aig Imokwedon, C-O-N. I hope I pronounced that name properly. You know, every time people spell my name, they write K-A-S-U-N-M-U instead of K-A-S-U-M-U. I never get upset because I murder people's names a lot. You know, I said, just go on, call me whatever you like. I have enough sins to atone for. So please forgive me, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here, sir. Again, I will introduce him more properly later on. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of a former minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Again, he needs very little introduction. I'm talking about, at times, you know, senior advocates of Nigeria, you don't know whether to start with son or to start with Mr. or Professor or Doctor. But of course, senior advocate of Nigeria, Henry Odion Ajumogobia, SAN. Please, let's welcome former minister, Federal Republic of Nigeria, and his very, very lovely wife. You're welcome, ma. Nice to have you here. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of our book reviewer for today. When we were stepping in here, he said, Kunle, you better don't mention anything more than my name. Otherwise, I'll come and pick up the microphone from you. And I said, yes, sir. That's a very, very tricky position to be as an MC. So I will do as he has instructed me. I'm sure you all know him. Of course, I'm talking about no other person than Professor Peter Okebukola. Okebukola. Prof, you're welcome, sir. Lovely hats, by the way, sir. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of our chief hosts here, this great institution that has existed since 1961 and is the intellectual base, we might say, for international affairs in Nigeria. Ah, let's give a hand and welcome Professor Ehosa Emmanuel Osagai. Welcome, Prof. Where's Prof? Ah, Prof. Welcome, sir. Okay. Also here are very distinguished former ambassadors who have served this country for many decades. They've represented our country. We are very proud of them. All over the world, they've served this great country, and we are very happy to have them here. Retired ambassadors, they are here with us. Ambassador Olusegun Akinsoya, Chairman, Association of Retired Career Ambassadors of Nigeria, ACAN, Lagos branch, and the first national president of ACAN. Welcome, sir. Also, Ambassador Shola Aboluri. Hey, I'm in trouble today. Aboluri. You know, maybe the saving grace is more on your Lori. You're welcome, sir. Ambassador Tony Sholaja. You're welcome, sir. It's great to have you here. And I will also like to, of course, last but not the least for now, people are in different professions and they've been there for so many years. And I always say that for me, the people I have the greatest respect for are not those who spend their lives pursuing professions, but those who spend their lives living their callings. And those are men of God, great men of God. It's a pleasure to welcome the husband of the author today, Reverend Peter Blackshire. It's great to see you. Welcome. And of course, the two boys that you're seeing right there beside him, Michael and Christian Blackshire. Mike, Christian, welcome. Those are the two boys of the author and Reverend Blackshire. So it's great to have all of us here, and we'll quickly run into the program. We've got a number of things for today. By the way, my name is Kunle Kasumo. That's all you need to know. Just remember the face. Kunle Kasumo. That's my name. It's great to be here. It's a pleasure to be here. So we're going to have, very quickly, I will invite the chairman of the occasion, Mr. Aigoje Imokwede. Yes. Please let's put our hands together for Mr. Aig. Great entrepreneur, banker, so many things to say about this man. You all know him. He's done fantastically well. Corporate leader in Nigeria. Welcome, sir.
Your Excellencies, the former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, former Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Odein Ajumogobia, here with his lovely wife, the family that has put together this book, and even though the book carries the name of one author, Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire, when I comment a bit more on the book, you will find that I think there are more than 2 hands that wrote this book and 2 brains. And so let me also acknowledge her husband, Reverend Blackshire and her children or their children who are here, other distinguished personalities, gentlemen of the press, and such a wonderful audience. Typically, events at this great home of great events, the Institute of International Affairs, either start on time or they start a bit late. I prefer those that start on time, such as this one. But because there are two patterns to starting, I've observed that when you start on time at the Institute of International Affairs, the crowd comes to catch up with you. Because sometimes they are not too sure whether you're going to start on time, and they start streaming in about 1 hour after the official start date or start time. So we expect the hall to be full, certainly by the time we are mid into the session. This is for the benefit of our author, Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire, who may not be used to the politics of the Institute of International Affairs. So relax, the hall will be full. It is my honor to play the role of chairperson of this event for many reasons. Most importantly, of course, the association with a fine book. The secondary association with the families behind the book is also an honor and a privilege, but this is first and foremost a matter of celebrating intellectual output that is driven by a strong sense of patriotism, both at the national level to her country and certainly to the continent, Africa, and as a global citizen to the whole world. I will be talking a bit more about the book subsequently. But one thing that characterizes this book, and I believe must come from her upbringing and perhaps the influence of her husband, is the honesty and candor that is displayed in the author's approach to writing and disclosures. Indeed, I have known her father for as long as I have been alive, as a very distinguished African leader, and then as a child who learned how to play squash around him, and later on in my career. But there are one or two things I didn't know before I read this book, and I thought I knew him well. And I believe that the ability of an African, when asked, "How are you?" to say, "I'm not feeling good," as opposed to say in an African way, even though you have a headache, you are very angry and so on, "I'm so happy," is one of those things that we should begin to look to. She says it as it is, and as I said, perhaps she learned that from her father. I believe all Obasanjo say it as it is, or at least as they think it is. So this morning and afternoon, we have a very specific schedule I've been asked to maintain. Mr. Kasumu, note the proper pronunciation of your name, did not share that with us, I believe leaving it for the chair to share. What we're doing right now is the chairman's welcome and opening speech, which will be followed by a book review. The book reviewer, Professor Oke Bukola, has been already introduced. And then we will proceed to unveil the book. Now you have seen the Davos-style seating, which suggests that there is going to be a healthy discussion. When you have two Obasanjos on the same panel, expect fireworks. So I'm looking forward to this discussion myself. And then, of course, we will be able to interact with the discussants before we close. So this book launch and book presentation is very much driven by intellectual discourse, passion for countries and statecraft, and I look forward very, very heartily to participating in it. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and let's have a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful speech, Mr. Chairman. In case you don't know, the chairman is also an author, and I've got a copy of the book here that I want signed, so I'll be seeing you after. I don't have a lot of money, but people give me books. I don't know how this got to me, but I got it. It's free. Great. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and this morning she said to me, why are famous people called Obasanjo? I said, what do you mean by famous people? Why are they called Obasanjo? She said, there is a Obasanjo general. I said, yeah. She said, then there is a Obasanjo president. I said, yes. Then she said, there's this Obasanjo. I had a copy of my watch on my bed. She said, then there's this Obasanjo too, is popular. I said, yeah. I said, but the three Obasanjos are the same person. She said, hey. I said, yes. It was a bit embarrassing for somebody like me who always prides himself in teaching my children history. How come my daughter didn't know that Obasanjo is the general, the president, and the author? So I have some work to do. Anyway, it's exciting when you deal with young people. We want to go straight to the book review. And I've got a long profile here that I should read about the book reviewer, but I don't want to get into trouble. So I'm simply going to call Professor Peter Okebukola, a man who has done so much for this country, to review this new book, Pillars of Statecraft. So welcome, sir.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in my line of business, we deal with books. So you can imagine my pleasure like the pleasure of a bee attracted to nectar when asked to review the book, Pillars of Statecraft. A stark scientific fact hit me in the face when I got to know the author of the book, Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire, who is a nugget in Mendelian inheritance relating to how traits are passed from parents to offspring. In the natural course of events, an elephant cannot give birth to a rat. An intellectual giant like President Olusegun Obasanjo, who has written books and published papers in scholarly journals that should earn him full professorship several times over, and who, as of today, has several books in his ever-active pipeline of manuscript preparation, cannot but give birth to an offspring with such an immense intellectual power as Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire. Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire was inspired by President Olusegun Obasanjo's concept of the 5 Ps to write this scholarly gift, as she became intrigued by the concept presented at the inauguration of the Africa Progress Group, APG, which is a successor to the Africa Progress Panel, which was chaired by Kofi Annan, with the express purpose of pursuing an agenda with all African governments, the private sector, international development partners, and other stakeholders in ensuring that every African, now and for generations to come, lives in a world in which he or she has a fair chance of leading a healthy, happy, prosperous, and fulfilling life. The Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library Foundation successfully bidded for and won the rights to relocate this successor to APP, which is APG, to Abeokuta, Nigeria. During the inauguration, which was presided over by the former president of the European Council, Romano Prodi, President Obasanjo introduced the 5 Ps as essential pillars for Africa's progress. These pillars are, first P, politics, not in any order, by the way, which is sound, people-centered governance. The second P, population, managed for optimal benefits and fulfillment. Prosperity, lifting people out of poverty. Protection, all-round security for all. And partnership within Africa and between Africa and the rest of the world. This book, Pillars of Statecraft, is broadly divided into 7 chapters, and the central thesis of the work underscores the importance of 6 pillars. I talk about 5, you're going to see the 6th later, that can enhance growth and development in Africa. The book, through an introduction, provided some of the most prevalent development issues in global politics and explained various concepts such as failed states, failing states, and weak states. The book provides a breathless journey into the various threats to democracy that have led to state failure in various countries such as Myanmar, Afghanistan, Yemen, and Somalia. The book highlighted some of the challenges facing these countries, which include high level of corruption, endemic and permeating all strata, insecurity, ill-established weak institutions, weak economies, warlordism, loss of territorial control, and management of diversity. The book emphasized that even though the power of a cosmopolitan society can be harnessed for peace and stability, it has become a liability and danger which has become a catalyst for state collapse. The introductory chapter emphasized that democracy remains the best political model for inclusive nation building, and that the failure of the communist experiment is well established. Most concretely, Dr. Obasanjo Blackshire noted that a copy-paste, drag-and-drop importation of political models from the global north to west will not work in the global south. This is in line with Baba Obasanjo's upcoming high-level consultation scheduled to hold in September of this year on rethinking Western models of democracy. The book recommends that effective lawmaking processes can serve as a foundation for state-building efforts rather than wholesale adoption of Western models which have tended to prove ineffective in developing countries, developing states. The second chapter focuses on politics, leadership, sound, and people-centered, which provides a superb portrait of leadership in the post-Second World War era and explains the meaning of leadership through the prism of strong and successful political leaders, in the hope that their actions and decisions will provide insight into what makes for good leadership in political terms. The author attempted to cover a broad base across the globe with a focus on good leaders, and he listed a host of them. One of those listed is our one and only His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo. The book further describes Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew's political mastery as it developed a third world country into a developed first world country within a single generation. On account of time, I'll just gallop through snapshots of the different chapters. I'm moving on to the third chapter, which focused on population, people managed and harnessed for optical benefit and fulfillment. The chapter begins by asking a critical question: are natural resources a curse or a blessing? And the chapter answers by stating that empirical evidence suggests that either outcome is possible. The chapter interrogates the question as it applies to population, focusing on the so-called demographic dividend or potential, which many analysts predict could hold the key to a strong future for the African continent. The author emphasized in this chapter that to achieve the Africa Union's Agenda 2063, that aspiration to become a continent where good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law reign supreme, the potential of young Africans must be harnessed. At the Africa Progress Group, we have established the Population as Asset Responsiveness Index, PARI. And I recall that about 2 years ago, PARI was formally launched right here in this. I can see that the DJ is happy about that because he was the book reviewer for that book. We formally launched the Population as Asset Responsiveness Index by APG, which is chairperson, or if you like, chairman, by His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo. Prosperity, which is the focus of the 5th chapter of the book, is a call for liberation from poverty. This chapter explains that poverty rates in many sub-Saharan African countries are the highest in the world and are forecast to continue to double digit in the coming decades. Even though Africa has been developing very quickly and has seen significant economic improvement and development in the past decade, many nations are not showing economic growth at the pace that is anticipated. I move on to the 6th chapter, which is centered around protection. And the author emphasized that security extends beyond the protection of borders, ruling elites, and exclusive state interests to include the protection of people. This chapter examines 3 examples that illustrate the principle of security and the future of states in ensuring the security of their citizens. The author also cited the appointment of His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo as High Representative for the Horn of Africa by the African Union, which he stated demonstrates the African Union's commitment to promoting protection and political dialogue all over the Horn of Africa. She emphasized that for the protection of Africans from security threats, human security, which means freedom from fear, freedom from want, and freedom to live in dignity, should not be seen as a focus for NGOs. Rather, it should be an integral part of state policies. The Center for Human Security and Dialogue, Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library, which I have the honor by the Director of Baba to serve as director, has continued to call on countries to focus on human security and its 7 dimensions. The author, Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire, emphasized that governments must return to the essence of their duty and direct their resources to the provision of public good, including basic infrastructure such as roads, reliable energy, decent health care, food and nutrition, security, good education, employment, as well as rule of law and order. The last pillar, partnership, was examined, and the author highlighted that much like charity, collaboration and partnership must begin at home. Different government parastatals cannot work in isolation if a state wants to establish strong institutions founded upon the optimal performance of each arm of government. It extends, of course, beyond the nation to the region like Africa and to the rest of the world. This exceptional book, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, has an interesting final chapter. There's this thing that they say the scholar ran past his master. Baba has put down 5 P's. And Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Bickerstead, I said, Baba, yeah, you keep your 5 P's. I'm adding, topping it up. And what do we have? The final chapter titled Prayer and Blessing of God. I see that to be a good pillar, a huge pillar of the 5 P's. And only today, although I've met Dr. Kofo's family a couple of times, I didn't know that Dr. Blackshire is a reverend. Oh, how wonderful. May God continue to bless you, sir. Wonderful. So the final chapter is prayer and pleasing God. Now we have 7 P's instead of the 5 P's conceptualized by himself. Politics, population, prosperity, partnership, prayer, and pleasing God. At the end, I have some professors. There are many of them, about 10 of them here. At the end of this review, there's going to be a test. I'm going to find out how well you do. The book is the product of quality research and experience sharing. It is an original contribution to how development can be achieved in Africa and in other regions. The book analyzes the challenges in Africa and offers critical recommendations at the end of every chapter. I believe that it should be essential reading for students and researchers in African studies, peace and conflict studies, human security, and development studies. It should be read by leaders all over the world and used as a template for crafting national plans. Little wonder it is entitled Pillars of Statecraft for Crafting National Plans. Principally, the strength of the book lies in the use of case studies all over, sprinkled all over the all the chapters, you have case studies. So it's not just theoretical. Examples are given of what has worked and what has not worked. So that when you read the book or reflection, you are able to learn lessons from those case studies that have worked and those that have not. Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire's book is an evidence-based work presented in a friendly, easy to comprehend language. I stress that it is a must-read for policymakers, academics, and researchers on Africa's development, as it offers an alternative to the over-theorized perspectives by launching a consensus between theory and practice. This book is indeed the hands-on manual that provides the needed solutions to addressing Africa's challenges. Once again, congratulations, Dr. Kofo. We're very proud of you, very proud of your family. You see, when I ran into Dr. Kofo's family, the daddy and the children, I saw humility, I saw reverence, I saw home training in them. And as I mentioned to you, Dr. Kofo, your children with these attributes are because every Sunday, you need to hear this, every Sunday we have attended a Sunday school. And my Sunday school teacher is His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo. He is one of the greatest Sunday school teachers that I ever encountered. And he's not by his, he gets the unction from above to be able to teach us in Sunday school. And we're learning now about humility. And I can see all the attributes that he said you want to be Christ-like, you should adopt those attributes. I can see that charity has begun at home. Baba, I can see all these attributes that you're teaching us in Sunday school exhibit in Dr. Kofo and the family. So congratulations as we await the unveiling of this book. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Prof, for that wonderful book review. Please, let's put our hands together one more time. Wonderful book review. It's not... So I have this privilege of reviewing a book every week on TV, and usually I get the copies of the book ahead. But because I have a book to review next week, I can't start reading a book I'm not reviewing for another 3 months. So I read the book I'm going to review next week. So I got this book, Pillars of Statecraft, and I kept it until a few days to the day I was supposed to interview Dr. Kofo. And once I started reading it, I said, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble. Because I'll give you a secret. There are some books that I read to review on TV that I find boring. Okay, so let me tell the world. It's a bit boring, a bit tedious for me to read. But there are some that are very exciting, and I really enjoy the experience. I just dig into it. I really enjoy reading the book. And hers was one. But it was also very intellectually demanding. So when you have books that are intellectually demanding, you need more time to really dig in and do a bit of research yourself and all that. So when I started reading these Pillars of Statecraft, I said I'm in big trouble, because it is an important book. And please, I'm not just saying this, it is a very important book. And well done, Dr. Kofo, well done, great job you've done. And I hope that all of us will have the same experience when we get our copies and read. And then I found out that she runs marathons. And I challenged her over the phone that let's do it. but she's running back to the UK now. She's scared. Okay. All right. So let's race into this so that we save some time. We are going straight into book unveiling right now. We are going to officially unveil this book, present it to the world. And it's my pleasure to introduce the chairman to lead us in this very important aspects of the program. So, Chairman, sir, you will do us the honor. Also with him will be the author, Reverend Blackshire. Christian Michael, please join. President Olusegun Obasanjo, please join. Dr. Okebukola, please join. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kasumu. In my privileged role as chairman of this occasion, we come to one of the main highlights of today's event, which is the presentation by way of unveiling the formal presentation of the book Pillars of Statecraft by Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire. Now, this actually looks like a lady's gown, and I approach it with a deep sense of responsibility because I've been asked first to open the gown, which I shall do. If the author would hold on to the tape, and I insist that the grandfather figure who infused in her the virtues to write the book also holds the tape on this side, and her husband as well. Please. Yes. Whilst I then cut the tape to the glory of This is very exciting. Wow. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think we will hold the book.
Oh, okay. Okay, they want us to hold the book. We'll take the ones from the bottom. So, take them from the bottom so that those at the top. Can we have the device off, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you. And congrats once again to Dr. Kofo. And thank you for everybody who joined to unveil that book. So, Pillars of Statecraft. We are going to watch a short video right now. The video, again, will introduce you to the book. What we've been doing since is we've been getting introductions into insights into the book. This promo will also help us to know what this book is all about. But while the video is being shown, if you will like a copy of the book, while the video is being shown, just indicates there are some ushers who will come over to where you are and attend to you. Of course, there's the alternative after the event to pick up copies of the book. There's a stand there manned by Roving Heights, so you can go there and pick up as many copies of the book as you want. Make sure you pick copies of the book, not a copy of the book. But if you want one or a few, right now you can just indicate and the ushers will come to you and they will help you out. A copy of the book is, because you are here now, so you've got the privilege of picking a copy of the book for 5,000 naira only. If you live here, it's going to be a bit more pricey, so jump at the opportunity. Thank you very much. So let's watch the video, and then we'll go straight to a very important aspect of this event, which is a panel discussion. Is the video ready?
This book is the result of the hard work and dedication of Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire, under the supervision of her father, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, and with the support and encouragement of her husband Peter and their children Christian and Michael. The outcome, Pillars of Statecraft, has been described as an important contribution to the discourse on nation building and composition of a strong state, garnering praise from distinguished politicians and academicians. In its pages, you will find a comprehensive analysis of key components of nation building in today's global landscape. Kofo has delved into the various challenges and opportunities that rise in the process of nation building and presented to the reader protection, prosperity, population, politics, partnership, alongside the powerful combination of prayer and pleasing God as important building blocks for excellence in statecraft and national development. This here is a celebration of the outstanding contribution the pillars of statecraft makes to the field of political science and international relations. Its in-depth analysis and practical insights offer a valuable framework for policymakers, scholars, and students who seek to understand the complexities of nation building in the 21st century. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Pillars of Statecraft, Nation Building in a Changing World.
Great. So the book is out. I can see some people are already asking for copies. Fantastic. Well done. Please get yourself some copies and enjoy that great book. How do we apply principles like this in nation building? That's the big question. And hopefully maybe that question will be answered this panel that is about to start. So we're going straight into the panel where we'll be discussing some of the very important points highlighted in this book, very important themes of this book during the panel. So without wasting much time, let's dive straight into that. And I would like to invite, we have 3 panelists for today, and I have the privilege of moderating the panel. So it's a pleasure to invite, first of all, the former president of Nigeria, the father of the author, the very distinguished President Olusegun Obasanjo. Come on, please, let's welcome Baba. Baba deserves better than that. I was looking forward to a standing ovation for Baba, but since you all decided to sit, well, welcome, sir. Okay, great. Also on the panel is our chief host today, who needs very little introduction, Professor Egosa Emmanuel Osage, who is the Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, NIA. Please, let's put our hands together for the DG of NIA. Prof, welcome, sir. Prof, I think you should. And last but not the least, of course, is the author herself. I want to make a little exception for Dr. Kofo, and I want to read this very short, it's a very brief profile, and I have my reason now, which I will explain. Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire is the author of this book, as you well know. But prior to writing this book, she earned a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology from King's College London in 2004. And then she obtained a graduate diploma in international relations from the London School of Economics and Political Science in 2020. And she has spent nearly 2 decades in a range of senior management roles at an international company. Now, Dr. Kofo has run, she's a keen marathoner, and she has done 13 marathons. I challenge anybody here. If you know that, you get chest. Come and raise this woman. Eh? So, yeah, I thought I should read this profile because I'm intrigued by her profile. You know, she molecular biology and then international relations, and this is one of the best books you will read when it comes to nation building. So I wanted you to just get a perspective on who the author is, and of course, she is the most important person in this hall today. Let's put our hands together for Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire. All right, so the way this panel will go is a bit different from regular panels. We want it to be very much freestyle in the sense that please feel very free. While the discussion is going on, it's not the typical one where I will be asking each person one question after another, you know, and then the next person waits for the question. No, I will just introduce the topic, the theme, and then the panelists will discuss and feel very free to, you know, dive into, politely interject when appropriate. And of course, members of the audience are very free, rather, to indicate if they have questions, even while the discussions are on. But please make sure your question is appropriate to what is being discussed, you know, and I will use my discretion to determine whether that question should be answered right now or delayed till later or even never answered at all. Any of them can plead the Fifth Amendment on any question. Okay, so let's make it very free, very enjoyable, and I'm sure there's a lot to learn given the very distinguished personalities on the panel. And of course, we've got very distinguished people in the audience. We've got a former Minister for Foreign Affairs here, and I'm sure he will be saying something as the conversation goes on. We look forward to hearing from you, sir. Okay, so first of all, this book is Pillars of Statecraft and offers 6 pillars for nation building. So I will start this conversation by asking a very general, broad question. When I read this book, the question I asked myself was, is this applicable in every country, every nation in the world? Are countries successful because they use these pillars? Are countries failed because they failed to use these pillars? Of course, that question was answered in the book very, very thoroughly. But I would like to ask the panelists, I would like President Obasanjo to start, and then we can join him.
I thought you will start.
Sir?
I thought you will start with me. Because my name is easy to pronounce.
Okay.
But basically, while we are joking, we do a bit of serious talking. You must, in future, learn to pronounce Nigerian names when you have a public occasion like this. It does not reflect well on a Nigerian not being able to pronounce Nigerian names as they should be pronounced in a public gathering. Just a lesson. Let me then start by thanking all of you who have made this morning and this afternoon possible. I will start with Kofo, the author. I will add you, Kunle, the compare, the DG, and the reviewer, and of course, the chairman of this occasion. I will, excuse me, want to go to a little bit of background. The reviewer mentioned that the 5 P's, how they came about, how they originated. But how we got Kofo into the 5 P's is another one, if Kofo wouldn't mind my revealing a little bit of family secret. Well, you've heard the background of Kofo, biochemistry, PhD in biochemistry. I tell you a story of that biochemistry PhD. When she was writing her thesis and doing experience and putting everything together. And of course I was paying the bill. and I thought that things were going well. I was of course very inquisitive, asking, how is it? And then I got the shock of my life when he said, my computer has been stolen. And you can imagine that you don't know this work, everything was in the computer. And you thought, well, and then the computer was stolen. So I didn't know what to do. Does that mean that you won't have a PhD, or you have to start afresh? What do I say to somebody? What is the sort of words of consolation that I will say to somebody whose mother has been overrun by a bulldozer? You will say the bulldozer doesn't make enough noise, or will you say the bulldozer was speeding? So I then said, well, look, what do we do? Of course, courageously said, well, I will see what is retrievable and I will go ahead. And she went ahead and got her PhD. Maybe it is the same type of tenacity that got her into this book. She got her job, and she was doing her job in an international company where she's still working. And sometimes my children seek advice from me. Sometimes they take what I advise. Sometimes they ignore me. Sometimes I seek advice from them too. And when they say what I don't want to hear, I ignore them. And when they say what I believe is useful, I make use of what they say. So Kofo then said to me, look, in my work, and I'm getting to more or less almost as high as I can go, unless something extraordinary happens. Daddy, what do you think I can do next? I said, well, look, there's no end to learning. Now you have been in this line and in this line. Why don't you do something in the international relations? And of course she agreed, and I believe with the consent and approval of the husband, decided to go to London School of Economics and Political Science to do a 1 year, is it 18 months? Huh? 2 years, oh, okay. A 2-year course in international relations. And when she finished, And she called me and said, "Oh, Daddy, I finished." I said, "Oh, good. Oh, 2 years just went so quickly. Well, let's see what you can do." And then we have the, is it outset or inset of COVID? And I said, "Well, look, let me test you on what you have done, what you have learned." So, and as Professor Kipukola pointed out, we have had the Africa Progress Panel relocated from Geneva under late Kofi Annan to our Presidential Library in Abeokuta. So on the launching of we've changed the name from APP, African Progress Panel, to APG, African Progress Group. And then we invited Ramono Prodi to be our special guest at the launching. And then I gave the 5 Ps. I like things that are, particularly when you are dealing with issues that are very serious, the way that can be remembered, and the way you can, even though they are interconnected, they are interwoven, intertwined, but you can see how they come together. So I have brought in these 5 Ps, population, which is the key, the main thing, that is what we are dealing with. And then politics, which is governance, and governance in terms of system of government, the and what you deal, the governance itself, and leadership. And then, of course, the protection, which is peace, and you cannot have security without peace. And when you have protection, we are not talking of just physical protection, we are talking of all aspects of security. And then we talk of prosperity, which is wealth creation, poverty alleviation, and how do you really make the population. I will come back to population, and then partnership. And I believe that partnership should be in concentric circle. Partnership even with the nuclear family, partnership within the larger family, partnership within the community, partnership within the state, if we are talking of state, partnership within the nation, partnership within the sub-region, partnership within the continent, and of course, global partnership. And as you heard from the book reviewer, Kofo decided to add the 6th P, which is termed prayer and pleasing God. Actually, there is one. And I said, when she brought that idea, I said, good idea. We can call it ice on the cake, or even the base of the cake, depending on which way you want to look at it. If prayer and pleasing God is vital to everything you may do, to all the other 5 Ps, then you make it the base, But if you want to see it as the crowning thing on all this, then you may make it the ice on the cake. But whichever way you look at it, it is very important. So your question is, are these applicable? Of course, very applicable. I take population first, which is what we are talking about. All other things will come to nothing if there's no population to deal with. When you talk of prosperity, it's prosperity for the population. When you talk of politics, good governance, governance over who? Not over animals, over the people. And when you talk of prosperity and partnership. So for me, population is the core, and all other things either support population or enhances population or detracts from population, but population is the core. Now, you cannot say that you don't have population to deal with for any nation. Now, if you have population to deal with for any nation, these other 4 P's, before you come to prayer and pleasing God, or as with prayer and pleasing God as the base, you are dealing with population, everything. And I believe that the way you take your population, the way you regard the population, the way you value the population determines what you do or how you use the other factors or elements, if you like, to bring up your population. But population is the key. And if you want to make your population what they should be, happy, to be able to deliver what they should deliver as relevant, important, the value you place on your population. And that value will depend on education, health, food and nutrition. It will depend on housing, all the elements that makes you feel that your population is important. And this is my experience, I believe that if you want to know how a country regards its population, go to the prison and the hospital. How they treat their people in the prison and how they look after their sick people will tell you the value they ascribe to their population.
May I, is my mic on? If I may build on that, on what Daddy said, thank you, Daddy, for your answers there, and I'll hand over to Prof. When I've just built on what Daddy said. I think everything that you've just described there, if the book really says that the citizens are what constitutes a state. A state is not an abstract construct. It's not just something out there. It's made up of people. So population, people really are the essence of the state. And to your question, Kunle, every nation is made up of citizens and people. So they constitute what the nation is about. And all the other pillars support that. So to Daddy's point, whether you're talking about partnership, if you're collaborating locally, regionally or globally, you're collaborating to build your nation so that your people can thrive and prosper. If you're talking about prosperity, you want your people to flourish, to thrive, again, to be the best that they can. Everything that you do is for the people. You're protecting people. You are, you want your people to prosper. So everything is around the people. And I think for that reason, all the pillars are applicable to every single nation, whether they're weak states, whether they're failing states, whether they're failed states, or even the so-called settled states. I think these pillars are universal and they're timeless. And I'll hand over to Prof.
Yes, thank you very much. I think first is to congratulate daughter and father on this very great book that has brought all of us here together. Congratulations, Kofo. Now, I am a social scientist, and I recognize that the movement, if you like, from molecular biology, to international relations and the complexities of the social sciences cannot exactly be the same thing. So I'm going to dig deep into some of those holes that don't presently appear to be holes, but they are important. As I read the book, I was reminded of the old debate that we have always had, especially in political science, arising from Karl Marx's analysis on whether it is the economy that matters more than politics. And, Karl Marx believes that one is the base and the other is the superstructure. But political scientists would argue that politics is everything. And so politics is more fundamental than what Karl Marx was trying to say. Now, as I read the book, I was also reminded, that power is the essence of politics. So the technocratic conception of politics as governance and leadership, which is something that has come out of neoliberal orthodoxy, is important, but power is even more important. Which is why, that long ago, Aristotle, described politics as the master science. And he argued, that in order to govern well, you need to know politics. And he thought politics was all about, allocation of values, justice, and the happiness, which is the point about the population, which is very good. But that's on the first plane. On the second plane, I recognize that the state is the major agency of development, of stability, of progress, of everything. So all human beings belong to one state or the other. There are very few stateless people in the world. Even when we talk about ungoverned territories, they still fall within states. Now, so states matter. But not all states are the same. There are degrees of statehood, and you capture that. You talk about failing states, failed states, collapsing states, strong states, weak states, and so on. And you even talk about Kelsen and his notions of sovereignty, which is very important. So when is a state able to deliver its agency role? So states are not the same. And it matters what exactly these states are. So in terms of the degrees of statehood, you would find that context, the historical context, the social drivers, that lead to forms of statehood would be important. In this regard, there is an argument, there's a school of thought that believes that in most parts of Africa, we haven't arrived at the forms of statehood that would be able to provide the capacities, whether for prosperity or for protection. So maybe we need more prayer than all of these elements. Now, this is an important matter because what you see happening all across Africa is not an original condition. So in other words, it's not as if Africans are themselves given to violence. Now, we are not conflict-ridden people. We are not also victims, but we are a people whose present future is defined not by us, but by people who put these states together. And the point is that these states were constituted by acts of creation in which the people themselves were not party, to those forms of understanding. So suddenly you wake up on the 1st of October 1960 and you want to cross from the village in present-day Ogun State into the next place, and you're told you cannot. And you say, why? My cousins are there. They say, no, you now belong to a different state. It's a new realization. It's a new conception. And what are the important forms of this statehood? They say citizenship is there. You say yes. You have to pay taxes. You say yes. You have to be patriotic. You have to be loyal. These are things that we have to learn because the forms of statehood are a little, novel. They are new to us. Now, but what does this mean? There are those who call many of the states in Africa artificial states. Artificial states, that have given rise to a second independence movement, where people are now saying, in that first state that was a received state, an imposed state, we didn't find ourselves in it. Now we want to have a state of our own. And how do you arrive at such a state in the midst of authoritarianism, exclusionary leadership, where you have foundations of social injustice and very poor allocations? So that's where we are. And I would dramatize it in one very funny way. It's anecdotal, but it's very important. When the former president of the United States, our own brother, who was part Kenyan, went to Kenya, and Uhuru Kenyatta was president. And he was saying to him, these rights, they must be inclusive. They have fundamental rights, and, for, gender rights and all of these things, And Uhuru said, yes, it's very good, Your Excellency, But you see, in Kenya today, we are not at your level yet. The kinds of issues that we are dealing with are issues of poverty. People are looking for food to eat. People are looking for shelter. People want school. They want, health care. Perhaps if we are able to do that, deal with these kinds of matters, when we are at the level of America, we may even be ahead of America in terms of the kinds of rights that we'll be dealing with. So there are degrees of statehood, and those degrees matter in the capacities, that we all have to deal with these things. That's a historical matter. So I think that, we first have to interrogate the state itself. I don't think we have viable states in many places. And the people themselves, who have been told you are citizens of the states they don't understand, are now struggling to see if they can make sense of these states and find accommodation within the states. Accommodation that will mean that we all own the state together. There's equity, there's equitableness, there's justice, there's inclusivity, there's accommodation. And, we all can then prosper along the lines of that understanding. So these pillars are very crucial. I like them. But they presuppose that there's a viable state. My last point will be your degree of autonomy, the extent to which Kelsen says you're able to exercise your sovereign rights in the decisions and options that you have. For instance, many of the things we do today in our country, take Nigeria, many of them are authored by the World Bank. Many of them are authored by the IMF. And what are they? These are, products of, nostrums. Nostrums are experiments, that people perform with human societies whose outcomes and goals and objectives are uncertain. So they're experimenting with, societies like ours, countries like ours, states like ours. We are made to do things that their states never did. So we are having new experiences, and that's why I like nation building in a changing world. If we are not able to assert our relative autonomies and be in charge of our self-determined, options and outcomes, we will be led by the nose all the time to do the things that are orthodox but don't really apply all the time. Thank you.
Prof, I will agree with you only up to a point. when I talk about 5 P's, I do not ignore the state, but I take our state or the situation of our state as work in progress. As work in progress. Now, what you are saying is that we cannot do anything until we have finished the work of statehood.
No, not quite, sir. We are saying the same thing.
Okay, all right. Then
Yes.
let me go on if we are saying the same thing. Now, and the point we are making, and which I believe Kofo is making in this book, is that the process of nation building or developing the state to the statehood level now requires these P's, and you cannot get to that position without these P's. Now, I think we agree on that. Then you raise another point, that we are almost powerless. So we have to take it lock, stock, and barrel, whatever they give to us. And I don't agree with that. And let me give you a personal example. When I was military head of state, the World Bank has started something they called World, Agri Program. And they started the pilot project in Funtua. And it's a full package. They have seed, market, rural road, everything packaged. And I visited Funtua to see this, and I like it very much. And I thought, oh, look, this is the way we should pursue our Greek development, where everything is there together. So I said, we are going beyond pilot, and we will divide the country into packages of a Greek program in that way. And McNamara was the president of World Bank. And he came with his team. I have made up my mind that, look, this Greek thing is more. So he came to my office and he said, well, look, we have come with what we think your program should be and all that. I was taken aback. I said, come with what our program should be? No. We have what we want to have. And then I told him about this program, which actually was World Bank project. But we now want to go global, nationally, with it. And he said, no, this is what we have for you. What we have for you. Now, it was strange to me. So I then looked at him, I said, look, Mr. McNamara, I thought you have come here to help us. Since you have come here to dictate to us and you bring your money, we will not accept your dictation. Take your money and go in my office. McNamara didn't know what else to do. So reluctantly, he said, sir, we will see you again. So he left my office. He went to the Ministry of Finance, and Musa Bello was my permanent secretary. And we went. After about 3 hours, Musa Bello phoned me and said, "Sir, what have you done to McNamara?" I said, "Bloody man, has he gone?" He said, "No, it's not a bloody man, no." I said, "What has happened?" He said, "He has given us everything we asked for and more." Now, later on, of course, in the international arena, I met McNamara, and we talk about this story. And McNamara will say, "Look, what we wanted is what African leaders will tell us they want." He said, and then there was one man who came with him, our own man, who was with the OPEC fund. And then later on, I called him. I said, "Look, what happened?" He said, as they were walking out of my office, McNamara said, "Well, for once, we see an African leader who knows what he wants. We have to help him. We have to help him." Now, they know our weakness. And when we exhibit our weakness, they take advantage of it. They do. Look, I wanted what do you call it? Debt relief. I was going around the world. The man in the World Bank then was Wolfenson. And I said to Wolfenson, "Look, I will want debt relief." And he said to me, he said, "Look, if you are doing well, we will support you. And the way, so you have to do well." I said, "Well, what does doing well mean to you? Because I want to know." He said, "Reform." I said, "No, you are not the one to tell me about reform. I know that I have to reform." So I came. My first term, I was going around. I would go to everywhere. I would say, "Look, debt relief." Chirac would say, after listening to me, would say, "Oh, yes, you have a good point." Tony Blair will say, "Oh, yes, you have a good point." Clinton will say, "Yes, you have it." But I wasn't getting anything other than "you have a good point." So at the beginning of my second term, I went to Wolfenson. I said, "Look," I used to joke him, I called Uncle Jim. I said, "Uncle Jim, now you said you will help me. Where is the help?" He said, "Look, we are writing good report about you. That's the help we can render. You are doing well, we are writing good report. That's all we can do." I said, "Well, good report is not enough. I want debt relief. That's what I want." He said, "You have to hold your creditors. You have to hold your creditors." So I went to Tony Blair. I said, "Look, what can you do for me?" He said, "Okay, we will spearhead." And Britain spearheaded with Gordon Brown. And they carried the G7 with them. But that was one, we were doing well, reform and things. And I also promised that whatever we save from debt relief, we will use for our sustainable development goal. And on that basis, we got the debt relief that we asked for. Of course, I have to hunt head for Ngozi because I needed somebody who understand. I had Adamu Chiroma, who was a wonderful man, but he did not understand the international financial. I needed somebody, and I asked Jim Wolfenson, look, can you give me your lady? Ngozi had come to do 6 months with us. So I know what she's worth and all that. And I said, look, 4 things I would demand. Give her to me. When she finishes working with me, you keep her job and give her a job back. And Wolfenson said, no, the day he leaves, somebody else takes the job. But if he performs well with you, when she comes back, we will give her appropriate job, which they did. And then he said, I said, you pay her salary. He said, if you give her a technical job, we will pay her salary. But if you give her a political job, no. I said, technical job, what does that mean? He said, well, if it's an advisor. So, political job, I said, he has to be a minister to be effective. He said, no, we won't pay her salary. All right? And part of my problem is, how do we pay our salary? So I went to UNDP. I said, I had this problem. And UNDP said, okay, put $100, $100,000 in an account with us. We will match it with $100,000 and pay her her salary and any other salary. So 2 of them, Ngozi, who was from World Bank, and Adeniji, who was working with United Nations. So they have to pay their salary. But I put in $100,000, they put additional $100,000, and we got it. So the point I'm making is that if we say we are weak, we are weak. If we say we are not weak, we are not weak. Now, please, another thing, and you make that point very well. I think she made it in the book too. One friend that I had, very good friend, we were in what they call, we call it Interaction Council of former heads of government. We are still, I'm co-chair of that body now. Helmut Schmidt, Fukuda, myself, Malcolm Fraser were the pioneers who started it. And we will relax and drink and joke. But I know that we were too Eurocentric. So one day, I just got a bit frustrated. I said, Helmut, you people, you are not considerate. He said, Olu, why do you say that? I said, look, everything is loaded against us. Economy, look at it. And he said to me, Olu, we devise and design capitalism for ourselves, not for you. Now, I want you to listen to this. He said, we devise and design capitalism for ourselves, not for you. I said, not even for humanity's sake. He said, Olu, go and bring me your economics book and show me where humanity is a factor of production. And there's nowhere you will see humanity as a factor of production. And then he went on. He said, tell me, give me 3 reasons why I should not buy your cocoa for 100. Bring it to Hamburg. He lived in Hamburg. Bring it to Hamburg. Turn it to chocolate and send it to you for 1,000. Give me 3 reasons. I didn't find 3 reasons other than humanity. So that the idea is that those 5 P's, or of course the other one, which we can joke about, but it's serious for me, the 6P, we need them for us to get to statehood. And that's what we're saying.
Kofo, do you want to say something about that?
No, I was just going to add, I think the points have been extremely well covered. So thank you to Daddy and thank you to Prof.
Okay.
Very much.
Great. Let me take us to something I consider to be very important in your book. Your distinction amongst failed states, failing states, and successful states. And I'd like to bring some of these things home. Otherwise, we could be talking up there, and this is Nigeria. I was looking for the answer to the question, is Nigeria, given what you wrote, a failed state, a failing state, or a successful state? Given the...
Isn't there also another one, a weak state, not failed, not failing, but weak?
I think you described, Kofo described this there's a description you use for the fourth one.
So I talk about failed states, failing states, and weak states. And there's successful states too. But if we look at the category of the failing states, there are failed states, failing states, and weak states.
Okay, so my question to you first and the panel is, where does Nigeria fall in there? Because when I measured Nigeria, I was reading protection, I was thinking Nigeria. I was reading prosperity, I was thinking Nigeria. I was reading politics, I was thinking Nigeria. Okay, so
I think that's a great question, and you asked me that on the interview. So I will give my answer, and things have progressed since we've had an election, etc. So just to contextualize that, what I've written in the book and what I think we need to bear in mind is what are the attributes of, let's start with a failed or failing or even weak states, because the distinctions are not that big. So if a state is failing or failed or weak, what are the characteristics? What typifies them? And so you can, in your mind, so you said you think protection, Nigeria, prosperity, Nigeria. So for me, weak states are typified by a weakened economy. Does Nigeria fit that bill? Failed or failing institutions, weak institutions. Does Nigeria fit that bill? Mismanagement of diversity, insecurity, profound, in all definitions, whether we're talking food security, personal security, whatever form of security, employment. So high unemployment is another characteristic. So think about all those attributes. And for me, Nigeria is tick, 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 tick. So the answer is Nigeria failing, or weak state today is yes. And I think the question is, what do we do about it? So that's how I would answer. So maybe Prof or Daddy, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Kofo. I also read it. But, many of these concepts that we use are borrowed concepts. And we must, be sensitive to the, what do we call it? Sometimes the inappropriateness, of the concepts that we use. A state that has failed has simply disappeared. It doesn't exist anymore. So the concept of failed state and its finality, cannot be a useful one. Every state can be fragile, and there are degrees of fragility. So whether they are weak, whether they are failing in different categories and different degrees, they are all pretty much things that need to be redeemed. So there are forms of statehood that need to be redeemed. And I think that the whole point that she's making is there's no finality, except the state has simply ceased to exist, and we haven't had that. She talks about Myanmar, she talks about Afghanistan, she talks about Burundi, Somalia. These are states that, in a sense, had suffered atrophy. They more or less had become something beyond just being weak. But yet, both for the international community and the sense of partnership, there's a doctrine of responsibility, for instance, that states have come together to say, we need to salvage, these states. And the whole point about MDGs and SDGs was to say, is it possible to come up with a template that can help us to do those adjustments that will bring these states back on their feet? So these are degrees of fragility, not the finality of any state having failed. Even America itself is fragile in several regards, and America has to recalibrate, some of its processes, some of its things. And the point about this is this. The last time the NI had an event where the former Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, was here. And to every person's surprise, he said we must bring the state back in, which is a revision of neoliberal orthodoxy. And so the point about bringing the state back in is actually the point about re-empowering the state to be able to, deliver on these capacities.
Well, Prof, I agree with you there that failing state, well, there's levels of fragility in every state, and no state is perfect. You talk about America, and I used to joke with my American friends. I said, God has given you Trump to show us that you are human as we are human. Because if you can make mistake in your choice, we are always making mistake. So we are more or less the same. Now, but the point really is this. I want to talk about the forms of government. We talk of democracy. And for me, there's still no substitute for real working democracy to manage any nation, particularly nations with diversity. And there's no nation that hasn't got one form of diversity or the other. Now, all the other forms of government, kleptocracy, kakistocracy, autocracy, they do not really work for a long time. And so part of what we should be saying should be, what can we do to strengthen our democracy, to be able to deal with it? You want to come in?
I want to say I'm not happy with the answers. Yes, because while I understand these are foreign constructs and all that, isn't there some form of context that we could appreciate for defining or classifying the strengths of nations? I mean, we see that when we isolate issues like mortality rates or poverty level or literacy level and so on. So is there no context for saying, oh, this group of countries are successful countries, and these ones are not so successful, and these ones are failed or failing, whatever it is we're calling it. And I think in Kofo's book, I think...
Mr. Kasumu, before we started the event, you sent a request to me in my role as chairperson that I should be a stickler for time. And right now, I want to tell our compare that you are veering off time. This is the time for the audience to ask their questions.
Okay. Actually, sir, we started at 12:40. So it's 1 hour for the panel. And
you didn't ask the chairman's permission to reset the clock.
Okay. I defer respectfully. Sir. Yes, he has overruled. Okay. Autocracy. Okay, sir. My apologies, sir. So let's go to the audience, please. If you have a question, just indicate. Okay. Is anybody moving the mics around? Okay, please. Just introduce yourself, sir, and then you can ask the question.
My name is Nanfa. I was privileged to be a classmate to Kofo. Kofo, congratulations. Just before I ask my question, please permit me to just agree with the gentleman who spoke about Baba being his school teacher, because it is true that throughout our years in secondary school, Kofo distinguished herself, apart from the rest of us who actually didn't know why we were in school. And no wonder she was the first to get a PhD. Now, I want to ask a question because I had actually told you, Kofo, that I had a question to ask, and I'm glad that I get to ask it in public. When I saw the 6th pillar, I was taken aback because I had come to the conclusion that that was actually the issue. And Baba had already told us publicly that God is a Nigerian. So, Kofo, congratulations for making your stand on the issue of faith. And Baba concurred when he said it's about, if you say that you're weak, then you're weak. That's a statement of faith. So please tell us here, what inspired you to actually add that 6th pillar? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Nanfa. Really great to see you. I don't think I've seen you we haven't seen each other 30 years or something like that. We're revealing our age a little bit. But what inspired me, first of all, my faith is really important to me. So I think one of the reviews I've read, somebody said, what do you expect from someone who's married to a Baptist minister and is the daughter of a theologian? So there's partly that, but they don't shake me because I own my own position on things. So for me, really, if you want to know the answer to where that came from, I was running. So you've heard that I run a lot. And when I run, things come into my mind. I get ideas. I'm inspired. And I was ruminating on these pillars. And suddenly I just got this inspiration. There's another P that is missing. And that's prayer and pleasing God. Because the Bible says, and forgive me for saying the Bible says, because not everybody here is a Christian. I appreciate that. But we are all people of faith in one way or the other. My faith that I'm acquainted with tells me that unless the Lord builds a house, they labor in vain that build it. And you can paraphrase that by saying, unless the Lord builds a nation, they labor in vain that build it. So we're here talking about all these principles and concepts, and rightly so. But if we take away, as Daddy said, that base, that foundation, or you remove the ceiling, whichever way, wherever you put it, you have a weak structure. So for me, that's where that came from, is that firm belief that whatever name you use for God, higher power, Allah, Jesus, however you refer to him, and some people will say God even transcends gender. Is it a he or a she? Doesn't matter. God transcends all that. There's somebody, I believe, bigger than us, in whose hands we have to submit everything we do, surrender what we do, and take comfort and consolation in the fact that everything that we do, provided we surrender to that higher power, there will be a solution. So, Prof, to your point about, we've got these creations that have been kind of imposed upon us. Okay, we are where we are, and that's a completely brilliant point. But do we just surrender and say, okay, that's it, we're going to just accept defeat? Or do we say, okay, let's take what we've got, mobilize our people, focus on the people that matter, and lead them out of poverty, out of failure, out of insecurity. And that's where God, for me, sits, because God is love. So whether you believe in a divine deity or not, we all believe in love. Love is important. And that's what should be the essence and core of everything that drives us and that we include in our reforms and deliver for the people, the population. So that's...
Well, let me say congratulations to the author and, of course, to our papa. I'm sure you will ask me that I didn't mention my name. These are occasions that I don't mention my first name. I'll just say I'm Akinsoye, because there can only be one Olusegun. Papa made me an ambassador, and those were the days of Nigeria playing a very important role in the African Union. He was chair of the summit, the authority, for 2 years, when others do it for 1 year. Late Olu, there has not been anyone since then, sir. Olu Adeniji was chair of, late Adeniji was chair of the Executive Council. And I was honored to be chair of the Permanent Representative Council at that time. Papa has done quite a lot in Africa. And they say, like father, like daughter. Congratulations, Kofo. Now, I didn't want to talk about the issue of state and nation, because it's very critical to this subject. But perhaps if one looks at the beginning of states, and that is why most of the, say in Africa, most of the African countries are states, work in progress. Because we are state nations before we become nation states. At independence, you have a flag, you have a population, you have an anthem, and that was all. But the process of nation building is continuous. But Papa did a lot in the Horn of Africa, and he's still doing it. Ethiopia is a case in point, and Sudan. Late Meles, that was a very close friend of Papa, talked about developmental state. He was playing more emphasis on the development of Ethiopia to the detriment of the diversity of that nation. And that was why we have the problems of the Tigrayans and the Amharas, and Papa was the one that broke out peace. Same thing in Sudan. Can we say Sudan is a failed state? Or Sudan is an incapable state? Because you also have that in United Nations discourse. Capable states and states that are not capable. I believe that for those two countries in the Horn, and when you talk about sub-regional organizations like the IGAD, the early warning system in IGAD is the best in Africa. But it does not speak well of the Horn of Africa because you still have conflicts across. Now, what I will ask is that, is Sudan, with all that they have gone through over the years, would you say that Sudan is a state? Because to me, maintaining, even as a state, they have become an incapable state. But what can be done in the Horn of Africa? Can we say that is a question of a state that is incapable, or is it because they have placed wrong emphasis in development rather than the people? And that is why I would say that what Papa is emphasizing about population, the people, is very key to development. So, to my dear sister, will you agree with that diversification, that the idea of state nation or nation state, how does it play in your book in terms of nation building? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the question. So to your point about, state nations and nation states, we have inherited these constructs. So as you said at the beginning, sir, you start off as a state, and then the task of building a nation, that cohesive political construct, is a work in progress. As Daddy says, even America, we find, is working in progress towards that maybe unattainable state. But certain states, like Sudan that you mentioned, are now in a position where they are in such conflict. There's nothing they're delivering for their people. So we have to go back to people, because for me, the essence of the state comes back to people. And if a nation state or state nation, whatever stage it is at, is failing its people, is failing most of the people, and the people are insecure, they are unemployed, they are not prosperous, then whether you call it failing, weak, or incapable, it is definitely not delivering the goods that its population needs, and that is what we need to address. And that's what the pillars are there for. They're saying these are the guardrails, these are the frameworks that each and every single nation has to apply to be successful, whether it's a United Kingdom, whether it's a United States, whether it's a Sweden or a Somalia or a Nigeria. You apply these principles on an ongoing basis. Continuity is important. If you have a government that applies the principles and then another government comes and fails to apply them, you fall down, you take one step forward, 2 steps back, you will never achieve progress. So it's about continuous progress. It's about continually moving forward, whatever stage you are as a nation. So hopefully that answers your question, sir, that the essence really, as Daddy says, is population and the people. If our leaders focus on the who that matters, and the application of these principles on a constant, continuous basis with policy reforms that are carried forward over and over again, we will in time attain, if not the end goal or the end state, but at least a better position than we are today.
Ambassador Akisanya, thank you very much. But let me, excuse me. One point that has been made in Kofo's book that requires being emphasized is, and I mentioned it in my initial remark, is management of diversity. And you talk about Sudan, Ethiopia. The reason why South Sudan broke away from Sudan is poor management of diversity. And as you remember, I was involved from the time of Numeri to Sadiq to all of them, to John Garang. In fact, John Garang embarrassed me on one occasion. When I wrote my book, My Command, John Garang came here to see me in Nigeria, and he saw the book. He said, oh, I will take this book away. So I said, well, you can take it away. The next time I saw him, he said, oh, sir, I tried a couple of tactics in that your book, and it worked. So I said, hey, John, stop that nonsense. Otherwise, they will say I'm promoting terrorism. But on a serious note, that poor management of diversity, which led to the breakaway of South Sudan, has continued in South Sudan. And up till now, South Sudan has no peace. So the point really is, what will our people, our leaders do to be able to manage diversity in such a way that diversity will be an asset, not a liability? Because there is no sameness is of human. Diversity is of God. And talking about Sudan, there was a meeting before the breakaway of South Africa. There was a meeting in Washington of people, Sudanese stakeholders and their friends and things, and I was there. John Garang was still in the bush doing his own thing. And at that meeting, I asked a question. I don't know whether you will remember Francis Deng. Francis Deng was a minister of state in Sudan, and he was at that meeting. And people from Khartoum and from everywhere came. And then I asked them questions. I said, look, here is Francis Deng, who is from South Sudan. I said, can he be the president of Sudan? And they did not hesitate. They said, never. Never. And I say, why? Two reasons. One, because he's not an Arab, and two, he's not a Muslim. One, because he's not an Arab, and two, he's not a Muslim. Then I asked the next question. I said, for what reason should I then continue to say Francis Deng should remain a Sudanese? Well, they say because he belongs to Sudan. And that is part of our problem. If we cannot manage diversity, then you don't expect peace. And if you don't have peace, what will you have? You will have conflict. And when you have conflict, you don't have development the way you should have it. So they are all interconnected and interrelated. And that is why the 5 Ps and the 6th one, which I say I will take as the base, because if everything, as a man of faith, I believe God is at the bottom of everything. And God directs the affairs of individual and directs the affairs of any nation.
Okay. Any other person? I think we have time for one more. Yes.
Thank you, and all protocols observed. Congratulations to the author and our Baba. Please, while I was coming to this place, over the radio, a young lady was lamenting, and she said that the reason why most people are leaving Nigeria is because we have people that are making policies and they don't know anything about the policies. And I laughed. But when I came here, this statement suits this gathering. So now, considering the 5 Ps, we have talked of population and the politics. And I want to talk more of our nation, Nigeria. We are talking of failing, weak, and all that. But when you think of the population, many of us are living here. When you talk of the politics, I think we also have the issue that people making policies are not the right people. Inside me, in my own thoughts, I strongly believed that most of the problems in Nigeria and Africa at large is more of internationally inclined. And from all that I've heard here, I think that my strong belief is a fact. Now, what can we do considering the population and what our children said?
Madam, I want to understand you. What do you mean by international inclined?
That is being influenced internationally.
Influenced internationally.
Yes, sir. Okay. All right. So
Boko Haram is influenced from where? No. Let Abi. Now, where is Boko Haram influenced from?
Yes. Yes. Please finish. Yes.
Okay. So what I'm trying to ask now, how do we, in order for the nation building in this changing world, rescue this situation, especially when we consider the young generation? And this last P, that is prayer and praising God. At times, pleasing God. At times, when you hear people, you see some people that are so angry about God and religion. The way they talk, you will be thinking, where are they coming from? What is even their faith? So please, how do we build up, bring out things that can elevate these problems in order to meet up with this nation building as at this present changing world? Thank you.
Okay.
Madam, thank you for your question. But I asked you a question that you couldn't even answer. But let me tell you, part of our problem in Africa is looking for scapegoat. We should stop looking for scapegoat. Look, I went to Maiduguri when Boko Haram started. And by then, they have killed the man who really started Boko Haram. And I said, I want to meet these Boko Haram people. One, I want to know who they are. What do they want? I didn't meet them directly, but I met them indirectly. And they didn't want anything. They are Boko Haram, true. They didn't want anything other than they want a better life for themselves. No more, no less. And can you blame them for wanting a better life for themselves? And then they said they believe in Sharia. And I talked to them. I said, look, Sharia is no problem in Nigeria because it's part of our constitution. In our constitution, you have to convey a Sharia court of appeal. If there is any appeal from Sharia court to a court of appeal, it won't go to the normal court of appeal. It will go to a Sharia court of appeal. But then they said, look, here we are. We went to school. We had no job. Do you blame them if after they have gone to school, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, they had no job? Are they not entitled to a livelihood? So it boils down to P, one of the P's: governance, politics, which, as I said, includes form of government, governance, leadership. And if that is not properly taken care of, then every other thing will go haywire. What do? You have a government, people kidnap, and they ask for ransom, and you give them ransom, and you keep your mouth shut. There will be another one tomorrow because they will ask for ransom. So that is why we have proliferated banditry. And because everybody knows that what pays now is to get a pump action gun and say you take somebody ransom. People who have been riding Okada, how much does he get for riding Okada in one day? And then he kidnaps Ike here and asks for 10 million. He will get 10 million. And when he gets 10 million, wow. Now, that is our problem. Let us face our own problem squarely. We have problem. And the problem is, well, what do we do with our population, our people? How do we raise them? How do we value them? And then how we value them, we determine how we. Look, 20 million children that should be in school in Nigeria are not in school. 20 million. Check in your Google how many countries in the world are less than 20 million. And 20 million children that should be in school are not in school. And that doesn't worry us. So you are waiting and you are thinking that there will be no Boko Haram tomorrow. Those 20 million children that should be in school that are not in school, that's the foundation of your Boko Haram tomorrow. Call them anything. But that should be our concern. And we shouldn't say, oh yes, it's externally induced. Poverty is externally induced. No. Poverty is either the conscious or the unconscious choice of our leaders, not externally induced. If we say no, then it will be no. If we say yes, it will be yes.
Let me add to that, if I may. I know we're out of time or nearly out of time. To Daddy's point, just want to build on that. You know, we need to focus on the fact that I keep bringing it back to people. Everything comes back to people. You know, ultimately, if with 20 million children out of school, that doesn't make you feel sick in your stomach. For me, the purpose of this book, I didn't write it just for the fun of it. I wrote it as a mission statement that hopefully you all get your hands on it. I'm not plugging the book, but the point is, it's meant to be a call to say, look, there are so many statistics in there, out of school, out of employment, multi-dimensional poverty, so many things that if you read this book and it doesn't galvanize you to action, it doesn't make you demand from every single government that they must deliver the public goods that we deserve, then we have a problem. We have a big problem. And we need, as a collective, to hold our governments accountable and say we expect, we demand that they deliver against each and every single one of these pieces. For our sake, for the sake of the next generation, for the sake of humanity, it's absolutely imperative. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. The panel is over, and I'll be inviting the chairman of this occasion to give his response to some of the things that have been said, both by the panelists and members of the audience. So, Mr. Ige.
Thank you, Mr. Kasumu. I think that the panel deserves a very proper round of applause. Kofo, you know you've written a good book when it stimulates excellent conversation. And given the conversation that I have listened to, without a doubt, for everybody who has the opportunity to read your book, they are going to learn. And perhaps your book will give them the type of equipment and education that we all need to make the difference in the nation that we all come from. The comments I will use to summarize the discussion we've had are as follows. You see, when we have referred to a state, and indeed Kofo's book takes from the definition, the classic definition of what you call a modern state today. It's Max Weber, and it's what we know as a state. A state is a state because every other nation that is recognized to be a nation recognizes it. And it recognizes you as having certain territory, and on the basis of that territory, you have a right to call yourself something, and your people are called citizens of that thing. So we are Nigerians because one day a territory was marked as Nigeria. We were deemed, having come from this territory, to be Nigerians, and that we would then sort ourselves out. Now, what does a state sort out? When this world was created by, I'm a Christian, but by whatever means you believe in, mankind was birthed. Mankind, every man and woman, has two things that drive them. There's nothing you can do about it. They are things you perceive and understand from human or worldly interaction, and there are things you perceive and understand from a spiritual reaction or spiritual realm. These are called needs. The existence of one man and one woman interacting, whether in the bush thousands of years ago or in the city today, is all dependent on those needs. Everything we do is driven by those needs. Everything you see, war, promotion, everything you see in life is driven by those needs. And so, because we have these needs, we recognize that to pursue and live and exist to the very height of which we can enjoy these needs, we need to give power to somebody to organize us to enjoy those needs. This is where the concept of the state, now I'm not talking about the modern state, I'm just saying the state comes from. So all of us come together and we say, okay, because we have a need to go to educate ourselves, to get married, to worship, let us give somebody called government the power and authority to organize us, the power to punish, the power to instruct, the power to confer, and so on. The power to kill, the power to tell us who to fight, who to protect ourselves from, and so on. Now, this book gives, in Kofo's own words, her own way of best explaining these universal realities. And she's categorized them into 6 P's as she's defined them. Our discussants have stressed that perhaps the most important P is the population P. And from this description I've given, obviously it is, because it's all about us anyway. The state exists because of us. There's no other reason. And the minute we say we don't want a state, we don't want a state. It's as simple as that. I'm saying the majority of the population. America is finding that to its own shock right now as to whether the definition of what it held up to be its state, right, can survive, given the way its people view their own togetherness and so on. But that's another story. And so, with this framework, you begin to understand that within this population comes all the other things we've spoken about. Most importantly, the sense of government and the sense of leadership. The thought I want to give you today is that they say that a people get the state or the leadership they deserve. Because the only way that you are going to change your state, the only way you are going to get the type of leadership you want that will deliver prosperity, education, and so on, is from your people. It's from you that the leadership comes. Every leader that we select in Nigeria, I say, is 5 phone calls removed from everybody in this room. If you want to reach the head of state, you will. You're only 5 phone calls from. That is how close you are to the person you select. And so, let us take the 6 P's. Most importantly, prayer
and belief in God, most especially that, because I think that that is perhaps the source of true humanity that makes people do right and good things. And let us apply them. And hopefully with these six P's rather, and the P's as defined by others and have been debated in this room, Nigeria in itself will find its way towards a successful modern state. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to thank our MC, Kule Kasumu, for doing a wonderful job. And I want to thank our panelists, Chief Obasanjo Baba himself, the DG of the NIIA, our author, Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire, for a truly fascinating performance. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that wonderful contribution. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody once again. Instead of asking us to go down, we might as well, because Chief Obasanjo has closing remarks to make, we might as well just, have it while we are comfortably seated, just like this. Just your closing remarks over the discussions we've had in the last hour or so, over an hour, actually. Yeah.
I don't know this arrangement. Well, once the chairman makes his closing remark, and that closes the hear from me? No.
Okay. All right. Okay.
We will pivot.
Okay. Are you okay?
So first of all, I would like to thank you. Let me start with a heartfelt and sincere thanks to God for today. You've heard me mention that, for me, my faith is the most important thing. And none of this would have been possible without His grace. Wholehearted thanks to you, including the online audience, for honoring me and my father by gracing us with your presence. Thank you for your time and your support. Today would not have been possible without the fantastic support of my siblings. Special mention to Dr. Toyosi Obasanjo, over there. Dr. Funsho Obasanjo. She's starting the clap. Dr. Sheon Obasanjo. Lots of highly qualified people in this family. You have been my eyes, ears, and my legs. And I'm really thankful for all the support you've provided. To my husband, Peter, and our children, Christian and Michael, I can't thank you enough. Peter, you truly are my rock. You live up to your name. I am blessed to have you. You've always given me your unwavering, steadfast, and constant support. You give me room to thrive and flourish, and everything I've done and I'm doing is because you have my back. You truly are my greatest cheerleader, so I want to say big thank you, and I thank God for you. Christian and Michael, you two inspire me to be the best version of myself every single day. You're a blessing and a delight, and it is a joy to be your mother. To my father, the man, the myth, the legend. What can I say? You, Daddy, represent everything I want to be when I grow up. I'm still growing up. I'm going to tell you a little story. Don't tell my husband. My father said to me recently, he said, look, if I were your husband, I would tell you to pack your bag and go back to your father. I said, why? He said, because you and this your father. My father this, my father this. Your own is too much. I said, well, a couple of things. After nearly 21 years of marriage and 2 children, it's much too late for Peter to send me back to my father. And secondly, Peter knew what he was getting when he married me. He'll tell you stories himself, but don't tell him I told you that. To serve God truly is to serve humanity. Daddy, that is your motto. And I draw great inspiration from those words. In addition to your ceaseless, unstinting and tireless commitment to serve not just Nigeria, but to peace and stability in Africa and indeed the whole world. I'm going to tell you another story, something that happened very recently. Only a few days ago, my father set Michael, my son over there, an assignment, and Michael wants to enter the ground line. Why is she talking about me? But I'll tell you why I'm telling you that story. So Daddy sent Michael an assignment to write an essay, my journey from London to Lagos. Michael, being very speedy, wrote that essay very quickly. Within 24 hours, he wrote 3 pages and submitted it to Grandpa, as they call him. Now, the day he submitted it, Daddy was quite tired. But he sat up in his bed and went through line by line, annotating as he went, correcting and marking. And he graded those 3 pieces of paper and handed them back to Michael and promptly fell asleep. He was really tired, but he took his time. Why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that story because when Daddy says human capital development is important, education is important, he really means those words. Charity begins at home, and he demonstrates that even within his family. So let me come back to the script. The word hero is often misused and is overused, but to me, you truly epitomize those words. So to you all, many thanks again. This book really is a clarion call, an impassioned plea, indeed a demand to create a fairer, safer and more just Nigeria, Africa and the world for future generations. Thank you all once again. I'll leave you with the invitation to go out into the world and change it by serving others. It truly is the only way to serve God. You go out there and be the change you want to see. Thank you.
That was very, very touching. So this is where we end this event. I want to thank everybody. Thanks. She's done vote of thanks already, so let me not do that. So I want to, quick announcement. If you want a copy of the book, please go outside there. There's a desk there. The Roving Heights team are there. So you can pick up a copy there, or you could book your copy. I think they also do deliveries. Anywhere you are, anywhere in the country, they will send copies of the book to you. So please feel free to see them right there. There will also be a book signing session after this event is over. There will be a desk outside there where you can go to the author and have your book signed. I love the culture of book signing because it just helps you to remember your encounter with the author many, many, many years after. So please try and get your copy signed after. Then when we're done here, we're going to have pictures. If you want to take pictures with the author and so on, you can have them here before we finally round up. So this is where we draw curtains on this event. It's been wonderful. I believe so. Have you had your time? Great time. So this is where we draw curtains. Thank you very much for coming, and God bless you. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, President Obasanjo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Kofo. So, red carpet, okay. So the pictures will happen outside where we have the red carpet, just outside the hall. There's a small refreshment pack for everybody. Please pick one if you have not on your way out. There's a small refreshment pack for everybody. Please pick one on your way out.